Hi guys! So today I thought I would talk to you about bad books. Now just a little disclaimer, I'm in no way, shape or form saying that my books are Pulitzer worthy. Christ no. I'm merely broaching the subject of whether bad fiction has a purpose after all. Now what got me to wondering about this was that I was on a train last week going to the city, and a young girl was sitting in the corner and she was engrossed in a book about a 200-year-old vampire who has the hots for a teenage girl. Lawsuit nicely avoided. And it disheartened me a little bit, I'm not gonna lie, knowing that there are so many other great books, you know, targeted at her age group, so much better books. But then it got me to thinking, when I was her age, I was similarly engrossed in a series that was just as questionably written, with, now that I think about it, way more troubling storylines. And this series was called the Dollanganger series, or Flowers in the Attic. Now, when I read this as a kid, I was 16, you know, you're a kid, I thought to myself, this is so engrossing, and this is so cool, and the characters are so well drawn out, and isn't it an awesome storyline? And then I came across the book in a bargain bin for $5 about 5 years ago. And I thought to myself, well, why don't I give it a reread? It's $5, you know. That's all I've got to lose, really. And so I took it home and I read it, just to see whether it stands up to an adult reread. And the conclusion I came to at the end of it was that A, it wasn't fit to jack up a car, and B, I could have bought a block of chocolate with that money. Now, I know some of you are probably saying, Mel, this is uncharacteristically mean for you. And you're right, it is. I'm not saying that those books aren't entertaining or engaging, because they are, very much so. Just not if you're over 20. You know, I'm sure that kids these days are much more discerning, or a little more discerning than I was at that age. But it did get me to wondering, when I was 16, 17, I had given up on reading for a couple of years. I was a big reader right up until I was about 15. And then I discovered home video and TV, mixtapes. I grew up in the 80s, shut up. And, you know, boys, all this sort of stuff I deemed much more important than reading. So I gave up the reading for a while. Then, my best friend lent me her Dollanganger books and I read them, and I was engrossed. I could not put them down, as I said before. And from there I started reading other books and I got into reading again. So, bad as those books were, I can at least say that they reignited my love for reading. And after all, that's the purpose of books, is to make people fall in love with reading and with stories. So, while I'm driven to near fury seeing someone read, you know, 50 Shades of Grey and tell me it's a masterpiece, that's a subject for another day, I have to acknowledge that bad books do, in fact, have a purpose. If they encourage people to read, who am I to say they shouldn't be reading them? An addendum I'd like to add on to the end of this. Well, I suppose that sums up the word addendum, doesn't it? Anyway, a post-credits scene, if you will. Please do not take this video to mean that I'm endorsing the publication of bad fiction, because there is bad fiction, like the ones that I mentioned, and there is very, very, very bad fiction that is published only purely as a cash grab for the publisher. One of the books in those three that I mentioned is the particular book that I'm talking about, and I won't rename it because I really don't want to get sued. But it's a book for adults, allegedly, put it that way. Does the fact that this piece of elongated fan fiction, which as far as I could tell was unedited and sent the worst possible message to women about relationships and standards and all sorts of things, does that infuriate me? Does that drive me to pure, unadulterated, hair-pulling, nail-ripping, blood-letting rage? Yes, it does. Because I think of all of the other undiscovered authors who have brilliant stories just waiting to find an audience, who worked for years on them and are still impoverished and still having to work crappy sales jobs just to make ends meet, you know, or aren't surviving at all. So, the publication of terrible fiction pisses me off to real fury. That I don't think anyone should be reading, and I do judge people for reading it. The books I was speaking of were bad fiction. So not good fiction, but not terrible. The V.C. Andrews books, I think, would fall into the bad category. Not terrible, but they're also not good. So, yeah, just a little addendum there. Anyway, this has been another of my rambly videos. I will let you guys go, and I will probably see you again tomorrow. I don't think anyone's actually watching these videos, but it's quite therapeutic to put them up. Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow.